Hey guys, this is Pastor Ezra. We're here with you today because we wanted to give you a special gift for Mother's Day. I'm here with several of the pastors' wives, and these guys get together on a regular basis and talk about life, share life together. You guys talk about all kinds of real issues that you guys deal with. Being a wife, being a mom, like being individuals, having dreams of your own, like how to manage all of those things about life. And these guys talk about those things all the time, and we wanted to give all the moms out there a chance to kind of get in on that conversation and share some of what these guys talk about with everyone. So we're going to get started here with just I want you guys to introduce yourselves and let us know a little bit about your context and your family.
I'm Michelle Wimberly, and we have 3 sons. Our oldest is 11, our middle son is 9, and our baby boy, ever growing, is 6.
Not that baby anymore.
No, I know.
All right, I'm Tara Dietz-Krieg, married to Brad. Our oldest is Finn, he's 15, and then we have Sully, who is 12, and then Killian is 10, and Sawyer, little guy, is 3, so...
Yeah. And I'm Heidi Bogue, and Jeff and I have 6 children, and I always mess up their ages, so I will just tell you that they range from 8 to 16, so yes, 6 and 8 years. It's a little nuts. We had 4 boys, a girl, and then a boy, and so it's Josiah, Isaac, Micah, Gabriel, Naomi, and Eli.
My name is Lori Rodman. I'm married to Ryan, and we have 4 children. Uriah is 8. Isabella is 7, Eden is almost 5, and a 3-year-old little girl too.
And I'm Lois Fisher. I'm married to Richard, and we have 2 children. Amanda is 38, and Sean just turned 37. And I'm also a very proud grandma. They call me Bama. Nice. And we have 7 grandchildren. Ewing is 13. Logan is 11, Alyssa is 9, Bethany is 7, and then they have another little one that's 2. His name is Josiah. And our son and his wife have 2. Lucas is 7, and their little one, Ethan, is 7 months.
Oh, that is awesome.
Just put me to shame.
That's amazing. That's good. I said Olivia was 3 and she's 2. So. Yeah, I mean, real. That's all right. You know, how old is she? Yeah,
almost 3.
Not even.
One of the reasons why I wanted to get you guys together and share with them, because there's a lot of pressure on moms like these days about to get it right. So what happens if you choose the wrong thing, if you choose the wrong school, or you don't discipline them in the right way, or you don't get them involved in the right activity, or you don't give them the right kinds of freedom, and suddenly you mess up your kids and they're ruined forever, right? I mean, there's like that kind of pressure. Like you guys feel that, and like so. I mean, I hear the conversation on the schoolyard and between moms, and I think that is so much pressure of like of that you put on yourselves, that other moms put on each other, and to get it all right. And what I've really appreciated about is that there's not just a one right way. There's actually several kinds of ways that like God can lead a family in that can be right situation for the family. And I just wanted to hopefully share some of your guys' point of view with all the moms out there to let them be able to see all different kinds of ways that they can follow the Bible and develop convictions with the leading of the Holy Spirit in their life to be excellent parents for their kids. And they doesn't have to look like your family, doesn't have to look like our family or whatever. So I want to jump right into it. So let's talk about the idea of discipline. Obviously, it gets a little different from like when they're younger to when they're older. But let's talk about discipline. It's a big topic of how to guide your kids that way. So Heidi, why don't we start with you? Why don't you kick us off?
Sure. I think Jeff and I have found, with our kids that the harder we work when they're young to discipline them, the easier it is as they grow. And, I know that when they're 2 and 3, sometimes it feels like that's all you're doing is a lot of discipline. and just a lot of time goes into it. But we have just found that the more we're consistent with that, and the more that we have expectations of a certain behavior or a certain heart change. I think when they're young, it's more about behavior. As they grow older, it's much more about their heart. So it requires just being more in tune with each of our children. That really the easier it becomes. And we've even noticed that the more children that we've had, the easier it's been, because we've ingrained a certain culture in our family. And, like Eli, for instance, doesn't always have to play with fire to find out, because he can see that the other brothers did, and so he doesn't always have to find everything out for himself, which makes it a little easier,
So when they're younger, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. It's the intensity.
Yeah.
Do you guys find that it's pretty intense when it's like when they're younger, that you have to be like really involved with those kinds of things?
I think it's when they're younger, it's pretty much directly about obedience. It's pretty much all about obedience. And I feel like when they get a little bit older, it's more character training. So you're trying to feel those out. And I feel like those situations are a little bit more difficult to figure it out. It's not just like, you do this, you get a consequence, but how do I encourage my kids to be generous or a good friend, or things like that. I think it takes a lot of time and knowing your kids.
It can feel exasperating when you're doing that over and over, disciplining when they're really young over and over. I thought it became easier to discipline our younger kids when I saw the fruit of what it did. I thought, oh, wow, this did work. And I'm thankful. It was motivating to continue disciplining at that toddler age, because you want to be worthy of them to follow you. As you're following God, you want them to want to follow in that. And so the consistency is as opposed to disciplining all over the place. If they know that you're going to expect the same thing over and over, it helps them win.
And along with that consistency, I feel like it's so important for both parents to be on the same page, because we went through some years where, one of us or both of, we were not on the same page with things. And we saw the effects of that. The kids they were a little lost, and they didn't know who to go to or who to listen to. And I think that's so important to be clear, communicating together before you discipline or, kind of set your standard out, together.
And so you guys, I hear a little bit of a trend of like, you're talking about consistency, but are you talking about consistency of like, it's always this consequence for this action, or where would you find the consistency is important?
I think the consistency comes in the fact that if you disobey, there will be a consequence.
Okay.
Not necessarily that the consequence will always be the same. At least in our family, it seems, especially now that they're older, everything's much more situational.
Yeah.
So, if a consequence needs to be given out, it might not be even dished out at the moment. We might need to talk about it. We might need to let our child know that we're going to be thinking about this, or maybe even ask them, what kind of consequence do you think is appropriate for this, But it's definitely the consistency of, if you disobey, something will follow,
Yeah.
We'll figure out what that is. But I think a lot of those early years, too, are about establishing your authority as a parent. And, just really making sure that our kids understand that, we are the God-given authority over you, and pretty much what we say goes. That doesn't have to be like in a dictatorship kind of a way, but I think that provides security for our children, because they are not having to figure out things for themselves. They know that, we are that safety net for them.
Yeah. How about you, Lois? You're way into this discipline. I mean, you're the one that actually did it well. Actually, we actually all really honor you. You have two God-fearing children with God-fearing families of their own. So.
Well, it's interesting to see how our children now are disciplining their children. And whenever we spend time with them, we want to build up our children in the way that they're disciplining their children. I personally don't like, the little saying, "Grandma's the name, spoiling's the game."
Yeah.
Because I want to honor my children, our children, and say, if this is their standard of discipline, I want to go along with that and build them up and encourage them, so that the grandchildren see that it's not just mom and dad being hard on them, but it's other people in their lives are also following that too. And I think it shows that it's a generational thing, that you are supporting them and you really want the best for them. As a parent, you look at this little baby and you say, well, in 18 years, what will be the fruit of the things that I've done with this child? So it's very important to have a long-range view rather than just the day-to-day. And I know when you have little kids, and our children were 19 and a half months apart, and I felt like, what was I doing all day but changing diapers and feeding children and cleaning up messes? And I said, well, what will I do beyond that? But our children now are 37 and 38. It goes so quickly. And this too shall pass, and you will have a lot more things that you can do for yourself. And but during the time of young children, just have a view of the future, and also just have another person, an older person, that can help you see that. And instead of just thinking, what is my purpose in life? And it's just really important to have a view of the future.
Yeah. With your, so, I mean, it is very exasperating. Laura, you kind of mentioned that. It's like exasperating, especially when they're younger, like those kind of elementary school years or even younger, that's like, they're kind of like constantly on you. So obviously they're going to make you mad. We're like, right? I mean, they're going to push your buttons in all the wrong ways.
A lot of chocolate.
Yeah, a lot of chocolate. How do you keep from disciplining out of anger?
I had an instance the other day, and I had to I felt like I was raging inside. I just had to leave the room, calm myself down, because I felt like I was gonna have a temper tantrum in a minute. I was gonna start freaking out. Because my dad always said the one regret he always remembers when he spanked me out of anger. This one time, and so I never want to do that, and I don't want to have regrets. So I want to calm myself down, and yeah.
Yeah. So you've had to take time to calm yourself down, or
I'm usually honest with my kids in that situation. I would have them, take a chill out if they needed to go calm down, and I would say, I need to chill out, and I need to go calm down. And I also apologize to my kids if I, yell at them out of anger and stuff like that. I'm just throw it all out there. Moms mess up too.
I think we all have moments that we're not proud of.
Yeah.
We all have moments that I know that I can look back and know that I shouldn't have handled that this way. And I think it takes just humility and going before your children and saying, I really screwed that up. I shouldn't have acted that way. I was disobedient to the Lord. Will you forgive me? And it's amazing how forgiving our children are, and that they see that whole cycle, they see you working through it. And I think that actually teaches them that, this is how I need to behave when I mess up too,
Yeah, the pressure to be perfect is it's unreasonable. You cannot be perfect, but you can be obedient to the Lord as you expect them to be, right? So that when you mess up, that's amazing.
I had a conversation with my children not too long ago about this, my younger ones, and I asked them, I said, there's times where I've done things where I'm not real proud of, can you guys think of times like that? And
Brave.
I know, by God's grace, they said, no, Mom. And I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe they were just being really nice, but I thought, wow, that's wonderful that they were able to forgive and really, see beyond some of our mistakes,
I think that when our children wrong someone else, or we wrong someone else, we need to ask for forgiveness. And something I learned is that you don't want to just say, oh, that's okay that you spoke mean to me or whatever. You need to say, I forgive you. Just those words of saying, I forgive you. And if you wrong your children and you say, will you please forgive me? Ask them in their heart, when you're ready, will you please say that you forgive me? Because I think that teaches a lesson more than just the issue at hand, I think.
Yeah. So they don't brush it under the carpet.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't
It
teach you
was
like, that's
never
fine, we just
okay.
move on.
Yeah.
You're like, no, it's
Right.
not. Like
Right.
when we wrong each other, that's really great. Let's shift gears a little bit here. So like we probably could talk any of these subjects we can talk about all day long. Obviously they're very deep. So there's a lot of pressure for mothers and for families to figure out what to do about the school issue. Do you homeschool? Do you public school? Do you private Christian school? So what do you guys do about that whole situation? Michelle, you want to kick us off on that topic?
Sure. We send our kids to public school. They're in Akron Public Schools. And I think, it's a decision every parent makes, and it's hard, you have to weigh out all kinds of things trying to make that decision. Something that both of us really value is that our kids meet a lot of different kinds of people. So people of different ethnic backgrounds, from different incomes, people even with different religious beliefs. I feel like we just want that for our kids and want them to be comfortable with different kinds of people. And I feel like public school is a kind of an avenue where that happens very naturally. And that has happened. Our school is pretty diverse in almost every way, the elementary school they go to. And so, but it takes because they're exposed to different worldviews, we have to stay really connected with what they're learning and who they're meeting, and kind of walk alongside them with the truth of the Bible, just to kind of decipher for them how they interpret those things, as they learn them. So I like that they're going through that when they're young, and we're right there, and we're able to kind of coach them through the things that they see. And that's one of the reasons why we like public school for our kids. And also just, it's been great for us just to be a part of our neighborhood community that way, sending our kids to the neighborhood school that's right down the street. We've been able to meet a lot of our neighbors and make a lot of friends in the community. And I think public school has been a way for us to do that. That's kind of accelerated that in our life. And that's been really good for us.
I can speak to that. We've chosen to homeschool. My background is in education, so I felt like I had wanted to use what I was equipped to educate my kids. But I feel like being a ministry family, it was a big influence in that decision because we're here a lot on the weekends. And so I felt that, if Ryan is going to be home on Thursday, it gave our family a lot of freedom to spend family time on that day, as opposed to and Moody classes are on Saturdays. However that works, it gives our family a lot of freedom to do school wherever, whenever it's convenient. And I also think one of my heartbeats for homeschooling is I want to help our kids have a biblical worldview. I want them, in the same way you said, Michelle, I want to expose them to the world and to all different types of cultures too, because I just personally love that stuff. But I want them to have a biblical worldview, and I love that. I selfishly love that I gain that time with them. It's because I love to be with them. When they're being good, I love to be with them. Yeah, and so I think too, just helping cultivate their own personal desire for learning, what they like to do, what their interests are. As far as schooling goes, I feel like homeschooling for me gives a lot of freedom, and that's kind of nice. It's a benefit to our family.
Yeah, so you guys homeschool for freedom. Did any of you guys ever try homeschool? Anybody else?
Yeah, we've homeschooled. In fact, right now I have 3 that are homeschooled and 3 who are in Christian school.
Okay.
And, we homeschool for a lot of the same reasons, actually, just because of Jeff's, schedule with the ministry, and basically our weekends are taken by church stuff, which is great. But we've enjoyed over the years just an opportunity to have Friday together as a family. But as they've gotten older, as you know, we have Micah in the 7th grade now and 8th grade, and then Josiah's a junior, and they're attending CBCA. As they've gotten older, we have, we never had a plan, like this is what we're going to do forever. We've kind of taken it year by year, and they expressed an interest to go to school, and we've been blessed to be at CBCA, and they're having a great time there. I'm kind of feeling like they're able to kind of spread their wings a little bit and, figure out what the world is all about. Although Jeff and I would both say that we never really homeschooled to shelter our children. I know some people do for that reason. That was never our motivation. Our motivation was just to have more flexibility in our schedule, and to be able to adapt to their learning styles, to be able to take them on trips. When Jeff travels, he usually grabs a kid and takes them with them, just to have that kind of flexibility. But I think what I've learned over the years on this topic is that no matter what you pick, they're all hard choices. None of it is easy. So if you're a homeschool mom, there's the sacrifice of time. There's a sacrifice of, ooh, there's your day. This is what you're doing. If you send them to public school, there's a sacrifice of your evenings, are consumed with the homework and figuring out, like you said, Michelle, being connected with what it is that they're learning, If you send them to Christian school or private school, the expense is a big sacrifice. So they're never easy choices, and I know that, no matter what a family chooses, it's ultimately for their child's best interest,
And every kid is so different.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, we have 3 in private school, but our oldest son, Finn, went for 4 years at public school, and he was a different kid than, like, our second-born, Sully, So I feel like, it really has to do with the individual and, like you said, the family, what works for your family and everything. It's such a
So you guys
personal
ended up
thing.
making different choices based on like the kid.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's what we did too. Our daughter Amanda went through public school, and then our son Sean, when he hit high school in 9th grade, we put him in a Christian school, and it was just your child and their needs. So that's really what we needed to do for Sean, to have him in a Christian school.
Yeah. So each of you guys, I mean, in your families, obviously this is a unified decision you guys are making. You talked a lot about the way that it fit your family, how school fit your family culture, right? How you guys were forming that and kind of utilizing the school option kind of in that. But there's also this other thing, academics. Like there's a lot of pressure for kids to perform academically, and for younger kids, like the college is a come-in, or is college coming? Like where is that? What about academic performance for you guys? How important is that for your families?
Well, can I talk about that? Because I was a teacher for 23 years.
Okay.
And our children, you have to know each child. And I would tell parents when I would have conferences with them, your child has the ability, they're not working up to their ability, or they really don't have a lot of ability, but they are working so hard. And so you have to know your child. And that's one good thing about having like an achievement test, because that will enable you to be able to know, is my child able to get a certain grade point average, or is my child really not able? And we only had 2 children, and they were both totally opposite of each other. And children mature at different times. I remember when our daughter was in 5th grade, all of a sudden, 4th or 5th grade, and she all of a sudden went, oh, if I study and prepare for a test, I'll get better grades. And you're thinking, it took you this long to figure that out? But everybody is just different. And you just have to know your child and encourage them according to their ability. And for some, it takes them a while to sort of get it to click in. And for others, it's just like naturally that they're going to be a hardworking student. So you have to, again, knowing your children is so important.
Yeah.
I think too what you were saying, Heidi, sometimes I feel like a lot of pressure. Like if my kids aren't doing well in school, it's my fault. It's all on me, then I have failed in this way. But we have also said, like, this is a 1 year at a time decision. That's one of the benefits to school in general, is we're not committing to this for life, you know. And as they grow and change, and they have their own opinions and their own, you know, and if they're growing in maturity, and can handle more, then there's a lot of freedom in that too. You used to travel a lot too. Like if Jeff you would all
Right.
go, you know, and
Yeah.
that would benefit
Yep.
your family
Yeah.
too.
I think for us, more important than academics is the work ethic, you know, and it's important that we teach our children that, yes, you need to work hard, because let's face it, most of life is about working hard, most of college.
So you wouldn't see it about a grade that they got.
No, I want to see
Okay.
that, you know, there's an expectation here in this class, and are you trying? You know, and what one child might get in one subject might be different, but as long as they're both applying themselves and, you know, they're not blowing a class off and they're working hard, and if they're struggling with a concept, they're seeking help, you know, that's the kind of thing that we're after. So, you know, maybe if one child gets a C on a subject, we might be rejoicing, you know? We really might. And we might go out and celebrate. Whereas another one, you know, might pull out an A and, wow, just happens, you know? So you try to figure that out with each kid. And, but I think what we're really trying to teach them is that, you know, it pays to work hard no matter what you do. And most of life is about, you know, sometimes just working hard and having a hard work ethic and just getting the job done, whether you like to or not.
Yeah.
You know.
I think too. I've been trying to sell, because our kids are very different too. Like if they are more academic and they do better in that, to celebrate that, but then help them celebrate each other. Just because your sister or your brother isn't as good at this as you are, like God has gifted them in this way, you know, or God has gifted them in a unique, different way. So let's celebrate how different we are from each other, you know?
Yeah.
So let's change the conversation a little bit to other kinds of pressures. You got academic pressures, schooling pressures. What about the rest? There's a lot of like busyness of life pressures. The sports, the music lessons, the being well-rounded, well-achieved children, right? That they pretty much have to be college professors of everything, right? And so, but let's add into that conversation. How do you balance that with also, because there's a lot of extra church activities. You guys are obviously, each one of you, there isn't a pastor's wife role at Grace Church. Each one of you have found your niche and found your ministry and are following God's calling in your life. So those are very thoughtful decisions on your part as well. But how does that with kids? There is activities that happen at church, and how much and how do you balance all of that to make a healthy family? Who wants to go first?
I would say for me, okay, for our family, we have never forced our kids to really be involved in a certain activity. Besides coming to church, we feel it's priority, you know. Yeah, they want to sleep in till 11 sometimes, but we say no, you know. But that's just the way we grew up, and it's not bad if, you know, your kids don't, but that's just, but like we found like there's things we could have probably forced our kids to do, which would have been really good things to try or disciplines to do. But we really want to let them like find their own passions, you know, and be who they are. And it may be something so different than what we ever thought. Like we have one son who's into Lego animation, you know, like we would never have thought that, but that's his passion. So he'll spend hours, you know, in the evenings doing that. And one is real athletic, you know, and whatever, they all have their own things, but we just want them to like encourage who they are and like really like be their number one cheerleader, you know, and show them that they can do big things with their passions, you know. But we are really heavy too on like trying to simplify our lives as much as possible. So we would like them to not be involved in more than maybe, you know, one or like maybe a second like church, like a Bible quizzing or something like that, 2 things, because with 4 kids, it gets pretty hectic pretty quick. But, you know, everyone's so different with like what they can handle in their lives and how busy their lives are. So I don't think there's a certain, you know, right or wrong way of like how many activities or whatever, but if it can, you know, if we can still like have family time and have time to really like have that relationship with your kids where it's not just carting them here and there. I think that's so important because so it's so easy to lose that. And with 4 kids, I feel like it's hard to find that time, you know, to spend with each kid like that, just undivided, you know, time with them. So I want to try and make sure I, you know, keep doing that with the activities going on and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us too, you know, by default, you know, a family of 8 or whatever figured out kind of early that we couldn't be the typical family, you know. And I remember, Jeff and I clearly remember this day, getting everybody ready for soccer. The kids must have been like from 2 to 8, you know, and it was just nuts. And we thought that this was a good idea for everybody to play soccer. And it was some Saturday morning, and we couldn't find cleats, we couldn't find shin guards, we couldn't find anything, and the uniforms had to match. And we are like pulling our hair out, and like 4 of them are like crying because they don't even want to go. And we're like, wait a second, something is wrong in this picture that we've bought the notion that this is what all families do and should do.
You
We
kids,
take it-
play soccer.
Yeah, we would take him to the soccer game. I know we're Brazilian. That's why. That's probably. We would take him to the game, and one of them would be picking dandelions the whole time, and the other, you know, was in tears because they didn't like physical contact, and it was just like a disaster. And so I remember at that moment we said, "We're done with this," you know, and we kind of went your way in that it was, let's let them kind of let us know what they're interested in. And now that they're a little older, it's been really fun to see them find their niche. And I think it is cool when they find the one little thing or whatever that they want to focus on, and then we will invest into that passion. But it needs to come from them.
So we probably have had situations where you've made your kids try something, right? Anybody have those examples?
When Amanda was in high school, she wanted to go out for cross country. So she went out for cross country, and she went to the first practice, and of course it was after school, and I went and I picked her up. And when I picked her up and she got in the car, she said, "Mom, I am not going to do this because I will not get my homework done." Now, see, she's in 8th grade by now, and she's all of a sudden, remember, 4th or 5th grade, saying, "Oh, if I study, I'll get good grades." So now she's saying, "I need to have time to study, so this cross country I am not going to do." Well, then a few years later, when she was in high school, she did cross country again, and she was able to balance it all. And to this day, at age 38, she loves to run every day on her treadmill. So it's like it started then. It wasn't so much that she wanted to do it in 8th grade, but then she sort of learned to balance that out, and she just loves to run. If she doesn't get a run in, she's not a happy mama of 5 children.
And you guys probably all had examples of like when they started something or they got halfway into the season, you're like, this is harder than I thought. And you're like, you're finishing.
Right.
Right?
yes.
What about the other side of like, they're like, I really love this. Can I do more? And you're like, no. That you pulled them out of that because of family decisions, or are there any examples where you had to tell your kid, no, too much? No, we're not gonna pick the 17th travel league.
Uriah would want to do every activity with everything every day. So we've tried to do the generally 1 or 2 things. And that's one of the benefits of during doing homeschool. He can do a music lesson during the day, or he can do something not taking up an evening. We've tried and will continue to try to say, you can choose something if it's available on the same evening. So like we're just kind of running around and I thought the benefit to doing Upward, which they loved and were disappointed that it came to an end, was that that became a church activity where they got to see their friends and it had a great emphasis, and they were memorizing scripture and talking about character development. So it was multi-purposed in that it filled the sports activity and it filled their growth in Christ, and it was on the same day. And, it had a ton of benefit. So I'd rather just hang out here a couple hours extra than, now there were some Saturday mornings where my kids are 2 to 8 that it was like pulling teeth to get here. By the time we left.
See, you had that figured out. I didn't think about the practices and the fact that I should have requested that all my children like be practicing at the same time. So Jeff and I were all over the place, but we've learned that now, and it was worth it because our kids absolutely loved it. But one of them didn't want to sign up for Upward, and we kind of like, we nudged him. We're like, just do it. And he ended up thinking it was the greatest thing. So that one worked out.
And sometimes kids, I feel like we have one who he's so passionate about soccer, but yet he doesn't want to sign up for he doesn't want to push himself. So we have to do it for him. And sometimes, at that young age, it's like you have to just what's best for them, what their passions are, but they're just being lazy, or whatever. And it's a work ethic thing.
Yeah.
Even with things you love, like the discipline of like practicing piano or whatever it is, it's hard. Like even if you love it, and so we try to teach them that. It's like, you're not going to get anywhere if you just let your passions just, fall to the floor and you don't do anything with it.
That's where sports or creativities or any kind of extracurricular activities tie into discipline too. It's like if I feel I use those as discipline. You don't get, if you're not practicing this, you're not going to have your screen time.
Right.
It's the same, it's discipline of your extracurricular activities. They tie to discipline. The threat of, you're not going to Upward is I will get my work done, because it's a privilege.
I think we have a little unspoken thing too in that I always think I don't want any one of my children to be taking up too much of the time of everybody else. So you can all be involved in stuff, but I pretty much want it to be a equal 1/6 portion of my week, so you're not going to consume 50% of the available time of the family. You have a sixth and a sixth and a sixth. So we make sure everything kind of stays balanced because I do have children who would do everything, and I have children who would do nothing. So
We set the policy too, just you're not going to do you can do all the fun trying things that you would like at home, but to join something and commit to something, we just set that you need to be 6 because the one time we tried something before, it was like, this is a waste of money. Because those activities are expensive too. So, it's like, well, I'm sitting here and you're not doing the activity that you're supposed to be doing. And yeah.
So to summarize, kind of like, if I am understanding that you guys balance the family culture, family time, right? Other values going on. You don't let one kid, if you have multiple children, you don't let one kid dominate what the family does. And you also don't let the kids tell the parents what is going to be priorities for our family. So just because a kid loves this, you're going to be like, and we're going to balance that with other things. So so even if a kid wanted to be at church all the time, you're like, and we live our life in the world, right? And we're not going to sit on the couch all day. So, you kind of balance all of those different things so that you're building into the character of your kid long term. So they grow up to be. I hear this this developmental mindset, involvement of each one of you, in making those decisions in real time with your kids.
We always said that our children joined our family. So for Richard and myself, it was what we had to accomplish, and then if it would fit in with what the family dynamic was, then they could choose these activities. So that they didn't think that, the history of the world began the day they were born. It was that they joined us.
that's good.
That is really good.
And this is why we love Lois. Because she's our mentor. She tells us what to look forward to. It's good.
I found too with this that I kind of had to change my own expectations because each activity you get involved in, you meet people, kids and other families who are all about that. And so I have to, for myself and for my kids, just think well, we're never going to be all about this because we always also have church and family and other things that are important to our lives. So we're not going to dedicate our whole week to just one thing ever. And I also want to be okay with kids that are just kind of, I don't know, average. I mean, I feel like everyone expects their kids to be super, I don't know, accomplished and the best at everything. And I'm like, it's okay if they just do it because it's fun or they don't have to be the best or I don't know.
I think it's our culture because I think back to when I was a kid. I mean, it's like, why do they want to go to camp when they're, 6? It's like, I didn't go to camp till I was probably 6th, 7th grade, or well, I don't remember doing much before middle school, but now everything starts so young that you feel that pressure from everybody, you know. So
And
it's
you
fun.
have all of your life to be an adult, but you only
Yeah.
have a small amount of time to be a child.
Yeah.
And so let them be home, let them play, let them try those things at home.
So let's jump into the subject of dating. So if we talk about, a lot of us have like younger kids and some are approaching teenage years and that becomes a thing. So we probably want to hear from everybody, but Lois, you're the only one that's actually on the other side. So do you have any advice for all of us that are kind of approaching those years of dating?
Yeah. For Richard and myself in our family, we wanted to convey to our children what was the purpose of dating. And the purpose of dating isn't just to be doing that because everybody else is, doing the dating thing, but it's really to find a mate for your future. And it's not just recreational dating, so to speak. So in order to have like healthy interaction with the opposite sex, you probably want to do a lot of group activities. And hey, church is a great place to be able to do those activities and see people with others, and they're going to be acting more natural in those kinds of circumstances. Also, in the Song of Solomon, it talks about do not awaken love before it's time. So children dating, so very early, they're really just dating because, well, that's what everybody else is doing. When Amanda was in 3rd grade, there were kids that said, well, I'm going out with so-and-so. And we would say, well, Amanda, where are you going? So, well, we're not going anywhere. We're just going out. Now, of course, she's 38, so I know that, maybe you ladies do that too. But it was like, again, you're awakening love before it's time. So, and
When
then,
did you start that conversation about dating with your kids?
Oh,
was it when they were like teenagers or like?
No,
Yeah.
when they were children.
Okay.
And just perhaps if you attended a wedding or someone in the family was getting married, you would talk about what the purpose of marriage was. And we wanted to show them that dating and marriage, it's like goes together. It's not, again, this recreational thing that, you do because everybody else is doing that. I remember one time we were visiting a family and the girls of the family all had boyfriends. And Amanda was there and she didn't have a boyfriend. And they said to her, oh, you're the only one who doesn't have a boyfriend. And she told me this afterward. And I said, well, Amanda, how did you feel about that? And she said, are you kidding? I wouldn't date any of those loser boys. So it was like she had a high standard
Yeah. Well,
of what to look for because we talked about it.
Yeah. So do you feel like you guys were able to have an influence on her standards?
Definitely.
Okay.
Different people that we would know in our church or in our acquaintances, we would point out those kinds of people and say, well, what would you think about that particular person? What kind of a husband do you think he would be? And so you're pointing out to them good qualities. You also need to know your children and what they're going to need in their life. When Amanda was in college, she was dating a fella, and we said to her, Amanda, could he ever say no to you? And she said, oh, no. I have him wrapped around my little finger.
Yeah.
And we said, because we know her temperament, her personality, and we knew she would need somebody who could say, no, Amanda. And when she started dating Bill, he's now her husband of almost 16 years, we said, well, Amanda, do you think Bill could say no to you? Oh, yes. And we thought, oh, yeah, he is a keeper. We really hope she, that she marries him. So it's you have to talk to your children. And we always did talk about so many things. Mm-hmm. And then Amanda, we would say something to her and she'd say, I know.
Yeah.
And then she came to me one day and said, Mom, do you realize that my friends, their moms don't tell them these things? I have to be you to them.
Hilarious.
So you use the whole dating conversation to let your kids know more about who they are. And when you're pointing out people, you aren't like, oh, she's cute or he's cute. You're like,
Right.
you're talking about character and like how that fits together, right? You're like training them to
Right.
be, that's really excellent. Thank you for that. It takes a lot of attention. I see like what you guys are talking about, like it takes so much attention for a mother to know their kids. Like all of you guys, it came up like dozens of times in each one of these things we talk about. I'm like, well, you have to know them. You have to like be engaged. That takes a huge amount of energy. And like that's not being a mother isn't like the only thing you are. Like you guys are your whole people. So I want to shift our conversation a little bit to like balancing actually the role of the mother and like how to be a healthy you. So probably a part of that is probably a subject we can tackle is what about the work question? To work or not to work? That is the question, right? So Lori, why don't you kick us off on that? Like so as far as like.
Okay. I would say I really feel that being a mom is a calling, and that if you have a kid, it's part of your calling. And that I try to view it, like Lois was saying earlier, in a big picture lens, that I'm going to reap all of my grand efforts one day when my
Children.
when they marry well, or hopefully.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of us at one point have focused a lot of our attention to staying at home with our kids. And also a lot of us have do or have worked outside the home. I think the major focus for me is I want whatever, and even ministry, it's like a lot of our time and a lot of our energy, even though sometimes we're the tag along or we're just here to support our husbands, it is a commitment outside of mothering. But I want the major focus of my heart to be into my kids. However you prioritize the hours, however you prioritize the weeks, the main calling for me is raising them up, is discipling them, is knowing them. That's the main purpose of mothering for me. But I work outside the home, and I love what I do.
Well, what do you do?
I work as an interpreter for the deaf, and I also tutor at the homeschool co-op. So I have multiple side jobs that I love, and I love the flexibility that it brings, because I can say yes to interpreting when it's available, and I can say no when I can't do it. And it's an adventure. It's like freedom for 2 hours, Yeah. And I come home and my kids missed me. If I never leave, so I'm always the bad guy. I'm always the that's all I am to them. And sometimes I see that they value what I do. They have a cultural experience because they meet deaf people or they meet people who have a different background than them. And I want them to know more than anything that being a mom is valuable, and that if in culture's eyes, if it's not as valuable, I want them to know that the biblical model of motherhood is that one day Jesus will say to us as moms, "Well done. You poured your heart into this, and you were faithful to raise them up." And because somebody is going to spend their time with your kids, whether they're away from you or with you, somebody is going to invest in them. And I really, I see that is a calling for me to raise. It's my ministry to raise them up and to be that person for them.
And what I hear you saying is that your calling and your focus is to build on your kid. That well done at the end comes whether or not you work or not work.
Or whether or not they turn out perfect. It's like that, which they won't, but that the Lord's asked me to do this and I want to be faithful with it. And working is part of that, for us, for our family at this time. Sometimes I work 2 hours a month. Sometimes I work way more. It just kind of depends on what's going on in ministry and what's going on in our personal lives too, Yeah. It's
feel
feast
like-
or famine in interpreting. It's feast or famine. You're there, and it's go go go, or
I think it's such a struggle, like for a lot of moms, like balancing home and your wifely duties and motherly duties or whatever, and then your passions and things like that. And I feel like for me, it's been a struggle like all the way through because I had kids right like during college, and then so right out of college, I never really had a chance to pursue a career, and so it was always just like a battle for me, like staying home and being all there, 100% mentally. And so I guess for me, I was always thinking the grass was greener, And so about a year and a half ago, I had interviewed for a job, and they ended up offering me a different kind of full-time job. And for me, I felt like it was the Lord saying, this is not the right time, And so I feel like for everybody, it's so different, but I feel like you have to listen to what God is telling you personally. And then I took a few days a week to work for this company, and I mean, it was great, but I felt like even that, at the stages where my kids are, it just felt like it was all of my margin time, and I just wasn't willing to give it up. And so since then, I've gotten more creative in how I can use my own passions and help contribute to the family in different ways. And by doing that, I found for me it's been so fulfilling because it's not infringing on my family in any way, and just I feel like we all have different capacities. I just didn't have the capacity to do that. So it's been so healthy for me and healthy for my kids to see me doing things that I love and see that other people value things that I do too, for them to see that. So I think there is such value in pursuing things that you love and maintaining that mentally healthy, state. And sometimes that may be through work. But I feel like you're saying, Laura, like it's so good to, realize that calling is like so important, and just to see the value in that. And for me, it took going to work a few days a week to kind of get more perspective on, that is so important, and that like I want to be all there for them. Even in the teenage years, it's like you want to be there for them, mentally, and it's not as much physical, but it's like I want to be present in their lives, So it's always a battle, though, I think, for everybody,
So did you feel like even some of the financial freedoms that you had, like when you work, obviously there's extra income, and you thought, well, we can do all these fun things that we wanted to with our family, but you felt like that wasn't a good trade-off.
Yeah,
the financial trade-off to the...
No, you know what? And I think for me now, we have a 15-year-old and we have a 3-year-old, so I feel like the perspective now has changed so much because I see him growing up and I see him leaving in a few years. So I see that value of time so clearly now. Where when they were little, I just, you feel like it's never going to end, and you just don't realize that your decisions, like, have bigger consequences or whatever that they do. And then, so now I see, I see the hard work, like you guys were just saying before. You see it paying off, and it's like, I want to keep working hard during these important years, So yeah, I felt like it wasn't weighing out. It just, just for where I am right now,
So it's going to be work, whether you're at home or in or outside the home, right?
Yes.
Whatever it is, you guys are always working. What about, share briefly, the rest of you with the other moms, like where are you at with the work thing?
I've always done a little something, and it's changed. When I had little kids, babies, I worked for 4 hours on a Saturday morning as a chemical dependency counselor, to a bunch of kids who would get in trouble, and then they'd send them to me. It was lovely. No, but I actually really enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed a challenge, so part of me with work is satisfying that part of me that just likes to tackle something and tackle it, with gusto. And then we've had our Labrador breeding business for 22 years now, and that's just been something that started out of necessity, and it's grown to something that we really enjoy and are pretty passionate about. But that's been great because we can weave it with, most of the time, we can weave it with our family schedule. And lately I've been working for a gym for Advanced Performance CrossFit, and that's been a lot of fun too. But I'm at the stage now where my oldest, he'll be a senior this year, and my fourth son, Gabriel, will probably be homeschooled this last year. And so I'm like you, Tara. I want to take it all in, and so I'm being rather selfish of my time with my family right now because I know it's going to go too quickly. So anything that I'm taking on is with that in mind. Is this really important? Because the bottom line is, our marriage, my relationship with the Lord, our marriage, and our children are the priorities. And then anything else after that.
You find that work, and you make work kind of fit in, or if you need extra income in a certain phase of life, those things fit around.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the reason I think of working outside your home is if financially you need to do that, which would be the case for many people, or you have to ask yourself, am I working just for more gadgets or more vacations or, that type of thing?
Because everybody would always like a little more. Wouldn't it be great if we had a little more?
Yes,
Yeah.
and you never have enough,
Right.
I guess, is how you always feel, but you need to learn to be content, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Right.
Or else, are you working to escape the responsibilities of children? And if you have children, I knew a girl who said to me, and she was a teacher, and said to me, it's a lot easier for me to go and teach someone else's children than to stay home and take care of my own children. So I felt that was a little bit sad on her part. But I did work before we had children, and then I was able to be home for 17 years. Again, I was a teacher. And when our daughter was facing college, it was really a financial necessity for me to be able to go to work. And we as a family had decided that for us, we wanted to help our children go to college. So that was why I went to work and to help our children with that.
Great.
I think it's important to know yourself. I love how families solve this in a bunch of different ways, and even just how many stay-at-home dads there are now. I think it's super cool. I've discovered about myself that I'm a design artist type, and if I don't have a project to pour my creative energies into, I kind of start to wither away, and I kind of need a little bit of that in my mix to be kind of like a healthy person. So years when I just stayed at home with the kids, I struggled a lot with being discouraged and things like that. So I had to find those creative outlets. And for me right now, I'm able to do that as kind of like a part-time, flexible side job, interior design from home. And it's been like a real privilege to be able to kind of add that into my mix and make a little extra money on the side too. But there's a little part of me that loves being a professional, and I know that can be a hard transition for some women who are coming full-time from the workplace and they have this identity as a professional. It's really hard to kind of make that shift. For me, I've discovered I need to keep a little bit of that in my mix just so I feel like me, And I think that's okay, And so right now I'm kind of in this, stage where I'm literally, during the day, I'm at a meeting with architects and I'm dressed up and I'm being this professional, and I literally get in my minivan and go pick up my kids and hang out with the moms from school. I'm flipping all the time, but I love that. I feel like a whole person when I have that in the mix. So I think work does that for me. It's good.
Along the theme of being a healthy person, obviously the marriage is a big part of that. Keeping your talk a little bit or give some advice on how to keep a healthy marriage during some of the stressful times of life.
Run away.
Run away.
Run away.
And don't feel bad about it.
No, I mean, as a couple.
With your husband.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, but you didn't. Run away. Okay, I guess.
No, seriously, Jeff and I have discovered this over the past few years, that if we run away together, that's a very good thing. And we try to carve out some time every year where we could, even if it's, when they were real little, even if it was overnight,
right.
Somewhere. it just kind of reminds you of like why you married that person. That like when all the stresses of life go away and you're just sitting across the table from each other having dinner and the candles lit, you're like, oh, I really do like this person, you know? But sometimes in the mix, when we're parenting and all the pressures come in, sometimes we don't even recognize our mate because it's just so much. So we've made that a habit, and we make sure we get away, we run away. And now our children are a little older, we've even like left them, the 3 older ones. That's a big milestone. And we came back, the house was still standing, and they were all alive. So it was great. So I definitely recommend some kind of getaway.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I think too, it's having an intimate and awesome marriage is something fabulous to give to your kids. They see, I want our home and to be a place that Ryan wants to run home to, you know? So then they're seeing that modeled, oh, mom does care. My mom does care that to make this place warm and inviting, not just for guests, but for our marriage too. And I mean, just practical, trying to have a date night when you can, you know. Ours are sometimes afternoon, super short, you know. But hey, you gotta take what you can, right?
Yes, because the children joined, usually the children join you after, the two of you have gotten married and you have this relationship. And believe me, they will leave.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, now what? So that's why you need to keep that relationship going. And even in the midst of all the, taking care of, I keep looking at you for like little children, you're a wife first. And I think it is so important that children feel very secure when they see mom and dad having their time and having a good relationship. I always felt real secure when my parents would kiss each other. Not that they were making out or anything, but they would just kiss each other. And it was just like, oh, like all's right with the world because my mom and dad love each other. So it's just, they will leave, ladies. They will leave. And then you'll be sitting here as grandparents.
The other ways you guys connect.
I feel like it's so good to be like each other's cheerleaders and encourage each other to like pursue your passions too and have your kids see that. Like my husband will be like, I'm ordering you, go up in your studio for a few hours, please, and I'll say, hey, you need to go fishing on your day off, like and then finding things to do together, like this year we found something, it's bizarre, but we found like we like art lectures, like people that lecture. So we've been doing that together on dates and it's really fun. It's like just finding weird, whatever you can find, things that you can both, like we have a hard time finding things we both enjoy. He's an outdoor guy. I'm a city person, so we found something we both kind of enjoy.
That's awesome.
So,
I'm picturing Brian.
I'm
Phenomenal.
Oh yeah, you'll have to talk to him about that. But anyway, I don't know. It's just finding things that you can do together. And even if it's escaping, like right now it's nice we can leave the kids at home and say, hey, we're going to be gone for a couple hours. But yeah, it was harder when they were little. And that is one of my big regrets of like not caring for our marriage like we should have during the really tough years when they were little. You feel like, oh, we'll get to it some year. Like and we didn't go away. We didn't make dating a priority. And you got to keep dating your spouse. It's like, I realize the value of that, So
It's really hard to fit in.
It is so hard, but
it's one of
so
those many
worth
other
it.
pressures. But
And we found like just the last 2 years or so, we try and go away twice a year, just one night or whatever. So we go December and May, so we mark it down. And it has been like the healthiest thing for us. Because usually around 6 months, you start to feel it again. You're like, we really need some time away. It always, it's about 6 months. And I remember like when the kids were little, just even go once a year would have been amazing, But we could have made it happen. We just didn't make it a priority. So I just think it's, just like you were saying, really important to run away. So
Charlie, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. Carving out time. You have to be so intentional. Our kids are all in school all day for the first time this year, so we've gotten in the habit of going out to breakfast once a week, and it's great. It's like you don't have to get babysitting. It's a cheap date, and when you hang out at home, you get distracted by so many things. Like that's the time that we get to sit and talk, and I feel like that's becoming more of a rarity because our kids are getting older and also need time to talk with us when we're all home together. So I feel like time, just the two of us, is even more critical now. So that's kind of what we do.
Yeah, so strong marriages. You guys would all be pro strong marriages.
Yeah.
Let's kind of finish up our time with all this. And I want to finish up with like if you guys have kind of a piece of advice for moms, whether they're doing great or whether they're struggling. I just want to kind of go around the circle and give moms a piece of advice to kind of cap off our time. Well, Lois, why don't we just start with you?
Well, Grace Church is known for its know it, live it, and give it away. So I would suggest that we need to know our children. You need to study them. You need to be a student of your child. And again, no matter how many children you have, if you have one or if you have 6. Does anybody have more than 6 at our church?
Oh, I'm sure.
And so you have to study your children. And then you need to live it. You need to live life with them, which takes time. And that goes with all the different activities we were talking about. Living life, have fun with your children. Enjoy them. Sometimes it's easier to enjoy your children than not. And then we want to give them away because we want to be training mature people to go out, leave our nest, go out into the world, and be able to do the cycle again. For them to be able to marry, have children, know them, to be able to live life with them, and then again, give them away. So I think it's important for us when we have adult children to be encouraging to our children. And I think after your children leave your home, that's when you can become a friend with them. You can't really be friends with your children when they're in your home. You're really over them. You are their head. But after they leave, you can become friends and just have really a different relationship, one that hopefully you can encourage them in their life with wherever they may be. If they're married, if they have children, helping with just their dreams and ambitions in life and encouraging them.
An encouragement for moms, I would say, I'm still in the young years, just moving out of that, but there have been some desperate nights, some sleepless, desperate hours, and if I can just encourage you to have something like this. We have each other, and we come to each in our own struggles and say, how did you do this? If you can have some kind of community of moms so that you're not alone. That has helped me in hard nights or in hard days of discipline, of exhaustion, of am I doing this? Am I alone? Oh no, I'm not alone. That would be something I would say if you can find or seek that out in your life group or with other moms at Grace, because that has been so beneficial to me, and just the vision of that you guys were saying, if you can see that this is going to be fast, even though those nights seem really long, it's going to be, I don't have any regrets for the times that I sat down and invested in my kids. I don't have regrets for the times that I stayed up a little later and listened to their hearts and shared that something unique and special thing. Instead of said, okay, go to bed, it's time for bed, I'm done, I don't regret those extra times where they felt that I really cared about who they were.
That's good. Well, I think I have a couple things. One is going to sound very pastor's wifey, but for real, I think having your priorities, and your relationship with the Lord first, your marriage, your parenting, your ministry, and everything else. And of course, your ministry is part of all of that, But I think if our relationship with the Lord is healthy and we're seeking that, it'll trickle down to our marriage. If our marriage is healthy and we're intentional about that, it's going to trickle down to our children, And if our parenting is healthy and our family's in a good place, it's going to affect our ministry. So it's a lot easier said than done, because a lot of times we want to focus on what's right in front of us, which is usually the children, and then we forget about the spouse, and then we forget about our relationship with the Lord, But if we can keep that in mind. And then I think the other thing I would say is let go of the E word. And we've talked about this in our group, and the E word is expectations, We so are consumed with what other people's expectations of us might be as a mom, as a wife, as, whatever, and that we let that define us a lot of times, and it's too much pressure. So I think we just need to let go of that expectation that everybody else has of us and just focus on, what is it that God wants from me? And then everything else kind of works itself out from there.
For me, I would say I have like two words that come to mind. First is like honesty. I feel like during those times that I felt trapped, like when they were little and everything, like being honest with the Lord with how I was feeling, because you're like crying on your pillow some nights and you're just like, I can't do this. Just like laying it out and being honest with your husband, like about where you are, not just keeping it all inside. And then, Lord, like we were saying, with other women that can like relate and just not pretend to have it all together, and because everybody is in the same boat, Then another word that comes to my mind is identity, and like not finding your identity in what you do or anything, but just who you are in Christ. And like, I feel like those are the hard times when it was like, I felt like a mommy robot, I'm just like, this is all I do all day, da-da-da-da, poor me. But it's like, no, like just thinking about it in a different perspective, just God's created you in so many unique ways. And like, I don't know. I feel like those are two big things that, come to my mind.
I thought of just faith. I feel like when I'm discouraged or I feel kind of pushed around by other people's expectations or how they parent, and I start to feel guilty, I just try to remember that God like intricately made my kids, and He like intricately made me to be their mom. Like before they're even born, He gave me the qualities that I would need to be their mom. And I'm the most qualified person to be their mom and to make, like us together, make decisions for their lives. And I think when I can remember that, I can kind of stay confident in our convictions and our decisions we're making, and just see vision for, I don't know, the depths of what's going on as parenting. It's deep and it's important.
That's awesome, guys. Thank you so much for sharing your time. I know that moms of Grace Church and everywhere love that you guys would invest your time like this. Getting you guys all at the same time in the same room is pretty phenomenal. And I know that you guys, you are praying for them. I know that you care for them. And I just want to say thanks so much. And I'm sure that if you guys see these guys around Grace Church, they would love to talk more about any of this stuff and more. And so they're incredible ladies, and I know that you'll be happy to get to know them more.